Hello, everyone. My name is NatDave, but I prefer to be addressed as NatDave. That's what most people call me. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering degree from Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah University of Technology, where I graduated top of the Civil Engineering class of 2022. Um, Back in school, most people admired me for my exceptional ability to manage my time very well, my ability to balance all aspects of my life. I was involved in so many extracurricular activities, but I was able to do them. I was able to handle numerous leadership roles whilst maintaining an unrivaled academic standing. There are so many tools that have helped me achieve and in this video, I'm going to share one of them with you, and it's known as the Eisenhower principle. I believe by the time you are done watching this video, you should be able to manage your time even better. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So this time management tool is known as the Eisenhower principle, and it was named after a former general of the United States Army who became the first supreme commander of NATO, and he also became the president of the United States. This principle is a pragmatic time management tool that helps people prioritize their tasks based on their urgency and their importance. So the principle recommends that we categorize our tasks into 4 different classes, and I'm going to list them in decreasing order of priority. But even before I list them, I want to talk about what an urgent task is and what an important task is. So when we say a task or an activity is urgent, it simply means that that activity demands an immediate attention. And if we fail to work on it promptly, it might result in instant consequences. I'm going to talk more about this later. And then on the other hand, when we say a task is important, it simply means that that task has an outcome that leads to us achieving our goals. This goal may be any long-term goal at all. It may even be a short-term goal. It could be a professional goal, like passing a license exam, or even a personal goal like burning fat. So even before I delve into each of the 4 categories, I would want to draw a distinction or outline the main difference between a to-do list and the Eisenhower list. So with a to-do list, we list all the tasks together without classifying them based on their urgency and importance. But with the right Eisenhower principle, it suggests or it advises that we categorize our tasks, or we place our tasks into 4 different categories. So without wasting much time, I'm going to take each of them one by one. So the very first quadrant, the activities in these quadrants are the important and urgent activities. These activities may be foreseen, for instance, an upcoming deadline, or let's say an upcoming exam is foreseen because you already knew that you will be taking the exam, right? Or these activities may also be unforeseen. A typical example is, let's say, a fire outbreak. Let's take this situation, for instance. If there's a fire outbreak in your house, then evacuating the building or reaching out for the fire extinguisher or even calling the fire service to come to your rescue can all be considered as important and urgent unforeseen tasks. You don't wait till you finish eating the food you were eating or till you finish watching the Instagram reel you were watching before you take these actions. Personally, I think having foreseen tasks in this category is a very bad habit. Let's talk about preparation for an exam, for instance. This is an important and urgent foreseen task, right? As soon as you register a course for a given academic semester, then preparing for that course's exam becomes an important but not urgent task. So at the beginning of the semester, preparing for exam is an important task, all right, but at that time, it is not urgent. It only becomes urgent or important and urgent when you fail to plan for the exam preparation. That is when you wait until the days are drawing nearer before you start preparing for the exam. So as much as possible, you have to try and keep all your important tasks in the important but not urgent quadrant. That is the second quadrant. I'll talk about it later. Then if these tasks are in the second quadrant, it gives you enough time, enough space to come up with a plan to execute these tasks without allowing them to relocate to the first quadrant. That is the important and urgent category. I think this is where most people fall short, because under normal circumstances, you shouldn't have foreseen activities in the first quadrant, which stands for the important and urgent activities. Those activities should be dealt with at a time that they are not urgent, or at a time that they are in the second quadrant. That is when they are important but not urgent, because that one you get adequate time to plan how to execute those activities. You don't continue taking sugar in abnormally high quantities until you are diagnosed of diabetes before you start checking your sugar intake. So that's all for the first quadrant. I'll move on to the second quadrant. I think I've already talked about this one. So the second quadrant stands for the important but not urgent activities. To me, activities in this quadrant are the most crucial, like I've already mentioned. They don't have any pressing deadlines, so we sometimes tend to ignore them, but they are the most productive activities to focus your time on. Think about all the activities that are important to you, like exercising, completing a professional development course, acquiring a skill, establishing a business. You can name them. All these tasks are not urgent. When I say they are not urgent, I mean they do not demand an immediate attention. And if you don't respond to them now, you are not going to suffer any instant consequences, right? So they are not urgent, but we have to plan for them. You have to plan for them even before they become urgent, because if they become urgent, you will be overwhelmed. Let me give a personal experience. So when I started my degree at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, even in my freshman year, sophomore year, I knew that I had graduate school ambitions. And instead of waiting to complete school before I start working on this aspiration, I developed a plan for this. So I started by researching the graduate school application requirements, and then I mapped out how I was going to meet each of them. Point one, I knew I had to take engineering. I knew I needed to write essays. I knew I needed to obtain some substantial research experience. I knew I needed recommendation letters from professors and all that. So speaking with senior colleagues, I noticed that getting references for graduate school application can be a hurdle. So for the recommendation letters, for instance, I started drawing closer to my lectures, especially those in the field of transportation engineering, since this is what I wanted to do in graduate school. So what I did was I was visiting them once in a while to ask for their advice and also assist them with anything, right? So it was extremely easy for me to get them to submit recommendation letters on my behalf when I was applying for when I was applying to graduate school, I mean. And even before I completed my undergraduate studies, I had already received a fully funded PhD in civil engineering offer from a university in Massachusetts, USA. So I often talk to some of my colleagues who are still in the application process, and you hear them crying, "Oh, Nat, I'm almost through with my applications, but my only hindrance is that getting professors. Sorry, I'm having a difficult getting professors to submit recommendation letters on my behalf." Then I ask them, "Why? What's the problem? What are the professors saying?" Then they go ahead to tell me, "Oh, this professor doesn't want to recommend me because he claims he doesn't know me well enough." But doesn't it make sense that someone is unable to write a recommendation letter for you because they don't know you well enough? Because if such a person is to write a recommendation letter for you, then the best they can do is to write you a generic letter, which really won't be effective, or maybe tell lies about you, which is something that most professors aren't willing to do. So that's about it when it comes to acting on important but not urgent tasks. I didn't wait till I got to my final year before making moves towards my graduate school ambition. You don't have to wait until you are sick before you get a health insurance cover. You don't have to wait until your house gets flooded before you fix the leaking tap. You don't have to wait until it's time for an exam before you start studying. You don't have to wait until you are put in charge of a team or you are made a leader before you take professional development courses on, let's say, people management. So that's about it with the important but not urgent tasks. If you have activities in this quadrant, all you have to do is to plan. Everybody has 24 hours in a day, or let me say 1,440 minutes in a day. But what we usually say is some people make very good use of their time while some people waste their time, right? What you have to do is, once you have tasks in this category, you have to develop a schedule on how you will be executing these tasks. Now, this reminds me, every year people set up New Year resolutions. This year I want to do this year I want to do that. Do you know why most of these resolutions aren't fulfilled? It's simply because those who set these resolutions for themselves fail to develop a definite plan to tackle these resolutions. I think I'm talking too much on this quadrant, so let's move on to the third quadrant. So the third quadrant stands for the unimportant but urgent tasks. Naturally, humans have this tendency to focus on these tasks, the unimportant but urgent tasks. Maybe it's because these are the tasks that are very easy to execute. These tasks are usually in the form of interruptions or distractions. For instance, you're at work doing something, maybe you've been given some tasks to do at work, then a phone call comes through. You answer the phone call, and before you realize, you've spent about 30 minutes, 45 minutes on that particular phone call. So these tasks are the unimportant but urgent tasks. Sometimes you need to be assertive enough. By assertive, I don't mean unpolite. You need to be assertive but polite as well, to say no to anything or anyone that may serve as a distraction to you, so that you can focus your time on your priorities. I think most phone calls may fall under this category, right? So let me share a personal experience, or let me share something that has really helped me. Although there are exceptions, I generally do not answer phone calls when I'm working, except when I realize that the call is really important to me. And another thing that I do is I have times that I make phone calls. So I assist people with graduate school applications, and usually people would want to call me to make some inquiries and all that. If you call me at a time that I'm at work, it's very difficult that I'll answer the phone call. So I'll rather plan to have such calls maybe after the day when I'm tired, that I can't maybe do any more productive stuff. That will be the time that I'll use to execute the tasks in the unimportant but urgent category. But of course, life isn't all about achieving goals. That is why it is important for you to identify your peak productivity time. Research shows that humans are at their cognitive best during the first 2 to 3 hours after they wake up, but it may vary from human to human. For some people, they are rather more active in the evening or in the afternoon or whatever. So what you have to do is to identify your peak productivity time and then use this time to rather focus on the important tasks. For those of you who are on Twitter, I'm sure you have noticed that Elon Musk has been tweeting a lot. Although I don't stay in the same house with him, I'm pretty sure that the time that he spends on Twitter isn't his productive time of the day. Maybe after work, when his brain is tired, that's when he comes on Twitter and make all those funny tweets. Yeah. So I believe that there is a time for everything. That is why I have decided to devote my commute time to and from work every day to checking social media. So while I'm in the bus, I make sure I reply all my WhatsApp messages before I get to the office. Once I get to the office, I limit the time that I spend on social media. I don't allow social media, phone calls, and any other distraction to interrupt my work. But of course, sometimes I compromise. Yeah, so that's about it for the third category, the unimportant but urgent tasks. So I'll move on to the final category, which is the unimportant and not urgent tasks. If I'm to make a to-do list, I would also make a not to-do list. And maybe I'll place some of the activities in this fourth quadrant in a not to-do list. See, these activities are absolute distractions. They are time wasters, and you need to avoid them if you can. Like, eliminate them from your tasks, right? Yeah. But on the other hand, they may also be stress releases, but you have to make sure you don't spend a lot of time here. I remember when I was in school, there were some gentlemen in my hostel who could engage in unnecessary arguments for as long as 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, just because this gentleman doesn't understand why the other one is saying maybe Messi or Ronaldo is the best footballer in the world, and they end up wasting about so many hours of their time on arguing, which is an unimportant and urgent task. So anytime you find yourself doing or involving yourself in these tasks, you need to ask yourself whether you are done executing all the tasks in the first and second quadrant, which I highly doubt will be the case, right? So personally, I don't invest so much time here, and sometimes I try to avoid it altogether. So that's all with the Eisenhower principle and the 4 quadrants that make up this principle or this matrix. In conclusion, after doing all these things, categorizing your activities, focusing on the important ones first, and all that, it doesn't end there. What you have to do is, at the end of every day, you need to evaluate your progress. You need to check whether you were able to accomplish what you set your mind to accomplish. If you weren't able to accomplish, you need to identify what distracted you or what interrupted you. And you need to block out time the following day or the subsequent days to accomplish the tasks that you weren't able to accomplish. And one last thing that I'll say is that you don't have to schedule all your time. Some people make their schedules too tight that they do not make allowance for other things as well. So in my personal schedule, I don't pack so many items in the important and urgent, important but not urgent category. What I do is I make some allowance. So maybe every given hour, I have about 5 to 10 minutes to, work on the tasks that are not so important, like maybe check social media, answer some phone calls, and all those other tasks. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope to make more videos and share more time management tips with you. If you want to reach out to me, that's my email address, natdave545@gmail.com. If you have any questions, any comments, you may leave them in the comment section, or you may reach out to me via mail, and I'll be happy to hear from you. Thank you.